Hello and welcome to Alpha News Global, and welcome to the first episode of #ForJustice, where we look beyond the hashtag and look at the lives of people who have not received justice for what has been done to them. We look at who they are, what happened to them, why they deserve justice, and what you can do to ensure that they receive the justice that they deserve. Today we'll be looking at somebody who you have certainly heard of in the last few months. Her name has sparked outrage across the globe and has caused many to stand up and fight against injustices. The name is Breonna Taylor. Before she was a hashtag or headline, before protesters around the world chanted her name and demanded for her justice, Breonna Taylor was a 26-year-old woman who worked as an EMT in Louisville. But beyond that, Breonna was a young black woman with a bright future ahead of her. A woman with goals and dreams of becoming a nurse, buying a house and starting a family of her own. She was a daughter, godmother, niece, and best friend who passionately loved everyone around her, even the most tiniest and helpless of humans. If you ask anybody who knew Breonna Taylor personally, she took every single opportunity she had to make a difference and change somebody else's life for the better. Despite working a 15-hour shift and sneaking in minimal hours of sleep every now and then, Breonna was always on the lookout to help the next person. This need to constantly help people is what led her to work in the medical field. Shortly after midnight on 13th of March, 3 plainclothed LMPD officers used a battering ram to knock down the door of her apartment. Breonna and her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, were sleeping at the time, but the noise woke them up. Breonna, at the top of her lungs, called out again and again, asking the people to identify themselves, but got no response. Thinking they were under attack by intruders, Kenneth Walker grabbed his legally licensed gun and walked towards where the officers were. The officers had not mentioned that they were LMPD beforehand, so the couple had no idea who had entered their apartment. Kenneth fired a warning shot towards where the noise was coming from, aiming low to ensure that no one was fatally injured. The result was him shooting one of the officers in the leg, and as a retaliation, the officers fired 20 shots towards their room, 8 of which ended up hitting Breonna Taylor. These trained officers opened up fire with the total disregard of human life. As stated by the Taylor family attorneys in a wrongful death lawsuit that was filed. The police officers shot everywhere, including walls, windows, and a nearby apartment that had children nearby, striking objects in the living room, dining room, kitchen, hallway, bathroom, and both bedrooms. Breonna Taylor was unfortunately pronounced dead at the scene, and Kenneth Walker was arrested for the attempted murder of a police officer. But his charges were dropped about 13 days later. Kenneth Walker told investigators that Breonna Taylor struggled and coughed for about 5 minutes after she was shot. And according to the Louisville Courier-Journal, she received no medical attention for about more than 20 minutes after she was shot. But the biggest question is, why were police officers even at Breonna Taylor's apartment, and what happened next? The police had been investigating 2 men by the name of Jamarcus Glover, Breonna's ex-boyfriend, and Adrian Walker, who had been suspected of selling drugs out of a house more than 10 miles away from Breonna Taylor's apartment. A judge had signed a so-called no-knock warrant, allowing the police to search Breonna's apartment because they had believed that Jamarcus Glover had been receiving packages from her home. The warrant allowed the police to enter her apartment with no warning and without identifying themselves. The Taylors' lawyers say that Jamarcus Glover was already in police custody prior to the warrant to search Breonna's home. Still, law enforcement deemed the no-knock warrant necessary because, according to police records, these drug traffickers have a tendency to destroy evidence, have cameras on location that compromise detectives as they approach the dwelling, and have a history of fleeing law enforcement. Jonathan Mattingly, one of the detectives that shot into Breonna Taylor's apartment, said that they thought Breonna was alone the night of the shooting and claimed that they gave her more than enough time for the average person or even a disabled person to come to the door. However, in the Public Integrity Unit interviews that were conducted in March, Walker stated that the police did not identify themselves as they battered down the door, despite the couple repeatedly shouting, "Who is it?" He said the couple got out to investigate who was knocking at the door, or rather banging at the door. That was when they battered down the door and Kenneth fired. To add to the police's disrespect and blatant disregard for Black life, the police report that was filed on the day of the shooting was released, and on that report they had mentioned that there was no forced injury on their part, and that Breonna suffered no injuries despite the fact that she was shot 8 times. On top of that, the police report was mostly blank, which means they did not care and just wanted to get the paperwork out of the way. You would think after all of this, the police officers would be arrested, right? Wrong. After 5 months, the men that were involved in Breonna Taylor's murder remained free. I mean, sure, the police chief, Steve Conrad, was fired, but only after one of his cops had killed another Black Louisville resident. David McAtee, who was a local restaurant owner, was shot when police returned fire into a group of locals gathering outside of the restaurant, and it was discovered later that none of the police officers had their body cams on, so there was in essence no evidence of what had happened. A few weeks later, Detective Britt Hankison, apologies if I'm not pronounced that correctly, who blindly shot 10 rounds into the apartment through closed and curtained patio doors, was notified in a letter from Louisville Police Department that he had been terminated. As of now, the other 2 officers remain on the force, and all 3 are still free. The Taylor family, as well as the local community and protesters worldwide, demanded that the police officers be held accountable and be criminally charged. On the 26th of May, protesters, as well as friends and family of the Taylor family, marched and protested outside of Mayor Fisher's office, demanding that these 3 police officers be charged. On May 28th, 500 to 600 demonstrators marched in downtown Louisville, shouting, "No justice, no peace, arrest the police," and chanted her name over and over again in unison. This protest continued into the early morning of May 29th, where 7 people were shot and 1 was critically wounded. A lot more protests took place all over the world for months after the shooting. On the 5th of June, or what would have been Breonna Taylor's 27th birthday, many people used the hashtag #SayHerName in remembrance and injustice for Breonna Taylor. This was mainly done to raise awareness for her case. The Say Her Name movement has since brought a lot of attention to other Black women whose cases have either fallen to the wayside, have not been heard, or have not been taken seriously. On the 11th of June, the Louisville Council voted for the ban of the no-knock warrant that was used on Breonna Taylor the night of her shooting, and the ordinance was named Breonna's Law. The measure also mandates the use of body cams. These cameras have to be activated 5 minutes before the search and 5 minutes after. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul introduced a similar bill called the Justicefor Breonna Taylor Act. As of the 10th of August, LMPD had arrested 500 protesters over 75 days, which, by the way, is crazy because they have failed to arrest 3 police officers in a span of 5 months. Breonna Taylor's case really took off on social media. It has also caught the attention of many celebrities, including the likes of Kerry Washington, Cardi B, Kehlani, Jordan Peele, Viola Davis, Seth Rogen, Taika Waititi, and many more. One of the most surprising contributors towards the Breonna Taylor movement was the one by Oprah Winfrey, who, to honor the life of Breonna Taylor, has included a digital portrait of Breonna Taylor in her September 2020 edition of her O magazine. This is the first time in 20 years that someone besides Oprah Winfrey herself has featured on the cover of O magazine. In addition, O magazine has planted 26 billboards all over Louisville for 26 years of Breonna's life in remembrance of her story and for justice. To this day, the fight for justice remains strong. People all over the globe still fight to ensure that her memory stays alive, and you can aid too. To help, check out the description box below to find ways to aid in the fight for her justice. We have provided links to websites, petitions, and resources that you can access, all free of charge. As mentioned before, Breonna loves to help people, and now it's time for us to help her. We have come to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. This is our first video in our series called Justicefor, and many more are to come. To ensure that you do not miss a video, we ask that you please like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so that you never miss a video when we post. If you enjoyed it, again, please like, share, and leave a comment in the comment sections and let us know what you enjoyed, what you didn't enjoy, how we can improve. And lastly, if there's something in specific that you would like for us to discuss in our segments, please leave that in the comment section as well. And when you share, we ask that you use our hashtag #ANGJusticefor. Until next time, have a wonderful day and keep fighting for justice.